So now we're on to our final session of the day, and we're going to close out with a fireside chat. It's all about identity. So please welcome Victor Zawadadsky, General Manager, EMEA and APAC MediaMath, Danielle Darko, Global Programmatic Business Director, MediaCom, and Lotame's very own Chris Hogg, EMEA Managing Director, also our moderator.
Thanks, Alison. And Danielle, Victor, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you this afternoon. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi there.
Hey.
Hi there. Thank you.
So
I tried to change my background. It did not work in my favor today.
No worries. No worries. So I'm going to start our conversation today with a little bit of reminiscing. The last 12 to 15 months, I think, you know, we'll all look back on this time and say, wow, that was interesting. It was chaotic. But putting the global pandemic to one side and focusing on our industry, you know, we've heard from the remaining browsers that they're going to deprecate the third-party cookie. We've had news from Apple around IDFAs, announcements from Chrome and, you know, around their browser policies, and subsequent introduction of Fledge and Flock, and then as recent as last week, you know, additional updates of a form in the industry that they're looking to delay for a year and a bit. But perhaps we'll start there. You know, we should start to have a look about how your organization has been planning and preparation for a cookieless future, and I'd like to focus also a little bit on has the Google's latest news changed anything? So Victor, why don't we start with you?
Thank you for opening that up, Chris. So yeah, big news actually. A little a little confusing at the beginning, right? When that came out, and it tells a story which is maybe not too favorable for Google. I'm not gonna risk my potential future Google career here, but it's really not favorable. So so good and bad news, right? So the good news is it's like any change is always painful for anyone in the industry, right? So at winners and losers. We've seen some washouts in the past of bigger changes. So talking of GDPR, washed out a few players. Talking of XTXT, or a lot of resellers vanished. And this is something which we expected to happen as well, like with that big change, right? So following the nice saying, never waste what is the saying? A good crisis. This was as well an expectation to say, like, great opportunity, let's embrace it. We started to prepare for that for 2 years from now. So it's been almost not a too big change. And it's valid what was valid before, like embracing first-party data activation versus the third-party cookie gives advertisers a competitive advantage. And it's as valid as it was a week ago, it is right now. Creating that competitive advantage should be on top of mind of everyone. Slowing down now is only going to hurt basically that capability. So why doing that? The pressure of survival, no survival might be not that top of mind right now, but the winning basically upside, or the upside, is still there.
That's great. It's great, and yeah, couldn't agree more. And Danielle, how have you been preparing for the future? And in light of Google's news, has anything changed?
I think similar to what Victor just mirrored, in light of Google's news, it does not change anything. It, if anything, is giving us the benefit of having a bit less time pressure, especially as we collaborate more effectively with our clients in preparation for this cookieless world. I think the benefits that we have been doing over at our agency is about educating the clients, a lot of research, a lot of time spent with our data team, who have come up with fantastic tools to basically enhance our data enrichment products. So if Google now wants to give us more time, we will embrace that. We will take that. We will make our product even better in preparation.
That's great. And Danielle, I'm gonna stay with you for a minute, and given your global role, I'd be very interested to dig in. Have you seen any regional differentiations in preparation for third-party cookies being removed from the ecosystem? For instance, if we look at IDs, have different markets favoring probabilistic versus deterministic? Or if we look at more context-based products, has certain markets been favoring publisher context versus, say, cohorts, whether that's the Google product or other products that have taken cohort methodology?
So to answer your question, I see it as two entities. The first entity is dependent on which region you're in. So for instance, in EMEA, we know that we have challenges such as GDPR. So the likes of cohorts linked to Google's products, Flug, for instance, may have challenges with scalability in EMEA. And then when you look at other countries, i.e. the US, we know that there's more abundance there, as well as with the third party. There's a lot of third party scale within the US. So that's one entity, looking at what region you are and what are the regulations in place to allow us to know what we can and can't do. And the second bit is, who is the client? What is their business objective? What kind of data do they have? And that will then determine, not necessarily about favoring one over the other, but working on a hybrid approach, which will favor the overall global client. Because yes, they'll have these regional challenges, but it all comes down to what the client has available, what their business objective is, and how we can support them globally, and also take into consideration your market nuances.
Yeah, no, that's really important. I never really thought about the asset enrichment being different in different countries. I'd imagine, say, email address again, might be a little bit stronger from one brand to another, or even one territory to another, and that would influence, potentially what kind of ID solutions or non-ID solutions you would approach.
Absolutely. So I think the starting point is having that conversation with your client, your global client, like, what do you have available, and take it from there. So having that first audit will determine your next steps and your test roadmap, of course.
No, makes perfect sense. And Victor, a similar question. You oversee EMEA and APAC regions for MediaMath, but are you, instead of looking at the different strategies, what differentiations are you seeing per region approaching the types of platforms such as CTV, which I know you guys are very strong in, as they relate to identity? What differentiations have you seen for the approaches for platform?
So really following what Danielle just said, like the assessment of availability and as well of regulations on a local level is the first very most important actually step. Then the second one is basically, how does your ad tech partners infrastructure cope with it, right? And we went down the path to say we need to be flexible, interoperable, and say no matter which region, no matter which partner, no matter basically as well like which ID we have to support, if it's cohort or if it's probabilistic or deterministic, it all needs like to play together, right? And as well like what are we going to do this year? So a solution for cookies and cookie-less solutions running within one platform as well, something we built. And then the fun starts when it comes to especially those channels, right? So CTV is one funny one. Let's see if that's holding true, but I don't see like a consistent, extremely scalable, all automated CTV targeting plus measurement solution out there so far, especially with the new regulations, right? So you need strong partners. You need some partners on the targeting side, on the planning side. Most of us from the digital world, not so new, but still new to how TV works, CTV kind of a hybrid. And then the real fun is on the measurement part when it comes to IP addresses in the European Union, which is a highly, not questionable, but highly tough thing basically to legally get through and to get it. Then publishers who are used to do things completely differently than to say like, I'm going to just integrate and allow accessing data by an external measurement provider, connect that and integrate into DSPs. So that's all the that's really all the fun part. Again, like never waste a good crisis, as nobody really found the silver bullet. We are pushing for at least being on the top of it, partnering with the right ones, and then pushing it down. Original question, just finishing that up to really answer it, is like we definitely see big differences across regions, right? So EMEA running on the GDPR, everybody wants to do something, but is on the verge to be brave to take decisions and jump into that. APAC being a little wild on one hand, with Australia clearly being, Australia is kind of funny, right? So they're probably the most developed CTV market, maybe even more than the US, at least from a very, very local individual perspective. And then some wild markets, on speaking of Japan, where we're very traditional ones, speaking of India, which is very mobile actually driven, but as well like with big players. So we partially partner with like the Amazon of India, I shouldn't call them that, Flipkart, biggest retail media provider there, partnering with MediaMath and looking into monetizing first-party data. So that might be another path basically for certain countries as well to go down, completely different than to a more industry-wide approach as we do have it in Europe.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting, and I think what really hit home is, you know, Europe, there's a lot of brave people wanting to push that push that barrier a little bit, but you know, it comes down to risk reward, and I think everyone's keeping a close eye on the industry and where they go. So I think that's really interesting. So I'm going to put context and cohort to one side. Not that they're not valuable strategies, but I really want to dig in a little bit on unified IDs, and more importantly around if we put IDs into two core buckets. For instance, let's look at deterministic and probabilistic IDs and how they can coexist aside each other. And what is the strategies really around that portfolio approach to maximizing identity across the different solutions? And perhaps Danielle, we'll start with you on that one.
I guess you could kind of have a hint of what I'm going to say. I personally believe in the hybrid approach here.
Okay.
I think looking at IDs is vital, and what I love about it is there are loads of giant players who have bought into this and are basically adapting and working with their data teams to basically make sure that it is something that it's tangible to most. And since we are DSP agnostic, acquiring those IDs will be a fantastic way for us to make sure we are still speaking to a right user. It has to also fit into the bigger picture of measurement and visualization for our client. So I wouldn't 100% just rely on IDs, because I also believe strongly in mirroring the other context and the cohorts. But like I've rightly said, you know, I like the fact that there's so many big players who are moving with this ID approach, and it's available in majority of the DSPs. Well, actually all of them. So it's brilliant. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did, and actually I think you led me nicely into Victor from a platform perspective. You know, I guess you're talking to all IDs, if not working with all IDs or a vast majority of them. What's your thoughts around the two different types of strategies and how they're going to play in your platform? You know, how do you look at them when you get two IDs necessary for the same person? I'm sure you'll get multiple. We do
almost too many. That's not true as well. But it's a challenge, right? And it's been a challenge it's been a challenge for quite a long time, basically, how to look at it from a technical perspective. Because you look at one user basically, and then the question is how do you define what one user is and append basically IDs to your internal ID, right? So or third-party ID to internal ID to really unify that. So that's really been a challenge for some time. Like, we went down the road and said, we are utilizing data when we see it on an individual basis, and append basically characteristics to a certain user which we think belongs to each other, right? So in very simplistic words. So that's one side. So I really would see it as complementary. And we look at the current scale of first-party IDs versus cookies currently. It's we can be lucky if we are ending up in 2-digit percentages in terms of share for now. This is scaling currently, but there are big differences between countries. So saying like looking for an infrastructure that works across cookies and first-party IDs for now. As soon as first-party IDs will be phased out, then changing to first-party IDs, and then basically having the opportunity to either select between providers or unify basically under one internal ad tech provider ID. I think that seems like the dual or the path to go. Households is another dimension, which is as well quite exciting basically, and then to say like what do we map to what. As well, they're like on one hand relying on partners and unifying them. On the other hand, as well, like we created an internal system basically to be able to match two IDs to a certain household. So that's the other one. I think that's more or less like the components which are important.
Yeah, no, and I think as programmatic TV grows, the householding is going to become more and more important. So yeah, no, makes total sense. So Danielle, around, you know, we've been busy. We've been heading towards a deadline for 2022 up until last week. You know, and it's all been this year's been really about testing. Would love to hear a little bit about how you've approached that, and just some interesting stuff around, you know, what your experience with testing IDs or other cookieless strategies.
Yeah, not a problem. So as I mentioned at the start, you know, it all comes down to first educating the clients and then understanding by running an audit on what is available and what will be available moving forward, of course. From there, it's all about developing that test framework. We are in a very fortunate position where there's been a lot of focus with the data teams that we have, and they have basically built out some proprietary data solutions that we're actually testing within the DSPs with some measurements, hypotheses linked to them, just to make sure that they are successful, they are scalable, and from there they will be basically shared globally with the other MediaCom companies for the best usage. So in terms of testing, we're of course working closely with our I mentioned the data team, but also working closely with some suppliers to ensure that we are putting the best test forward. And of course, thinking about which markets to test these in. We're considering all regions, of course, APAC, EMEA, and of course the US, a little test budget, which is just your standard case study, isn't it? Yeah. And then from there, it's just collating the results. So despite Google's announcement, this will not stop. Because we were all thinking the deadline was going to be December of this year. And I don't see us basically slowing down in preparation for that.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think we heard from the last panel, you know, we've been given some more time, so we should use that, but, you know, not sit back. And I think your point around, you know, testing actually is multiple partners. It's your client, it's your first party data, it's third party data, it's tech platforms, it's ID solutions. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that brings me nicely actually onto Victor. You know, again, you're sitting in the center of you know, of these tests, and your platforms are being utilized to run these tests. And you my question to you is, were we on track? Were we seeing enough IDs? Were enough publishers pushing? Were we doing enough testing? And, is the Google delay a bit of a reprieve for the industry? Did we need it?
Maybe, right? Maybe being a little selfish there. I felt we've been prepared well. Yeah. I can't speak to others, right? So that's a little let's say like maybe the overconfidence stance. But I think that's how it works, like utilizing market dynamics to gain market share, and as well as something we do. We've seen things like MediaCom, Danielle, like you've been definitely one of the front runners in terms of innovations, in terms of testing. So that's fantastic to see. We've seen on the other hand as well, like some which we've been really pushing that or kicking that can down the road until the very end. It's been it reminded me a little of GDPR in terms of embracing things and being prepared, or just like waiting until things crash. And we've seen things crash a lot. So we definitely not slowing down. So like Danielle, really great to hear that, let's say like really like similar thinking there and similar priorities there. And I think this is as well so important for all advertisers and marketing spenders to have partners like MediaCom and MediaMap to put that as a priority and to help them create a USP and a competitive advantage by just doing things earlier, right? So there's been some tech disruptions in the marketing space over the years, and the ones who embraced them were front runners, thinking of programmatic in general, or the whole this is so long ago when Facebook came up and Facebook ads were used the first time. Any other retargeting products which helped retailers so much, like to get ahead of competition. This first party data might be this other thing or this next thing, basically, to get the 10, 20, 30% more, which you need to jump ahead, and all of a sudden all your numbers swap, and all of a sudden you create growth dynamics if you hadn't had before. And I think whoever's not doing it really leaves out an opportunity which is there, which doesn't come that often. Well, it comes often, but like it's hard to utilize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've certainly as a business appreciated how the ad tech and the advertising industry has come together to help solve these problems and working together. I'm being nudged for time, so I'm going to jump straight to the last question. And in one word or very short sentence, what piece of advice would you leave the audience with today in terms of continued preparation for cookieless future? Danielle, do you want to take that first?
Ooh, one word. I would say don't slow down. I would say that options have been put in play. If you think about it, you have your IDs affecting your exchanges, you have measurement. We tend to operate programmatically, the giants are operating more and more as a walled garden approach. So think about partners that can disrupt that and work closely with those partners that will allow you for more of a cross measurement, so to speak. And most importantly, just keep testing. Don't slow down.
So don't slow down, keep testing. I think that's very good.
Pretty much.
And Victor?
Yeah, super aligned. Like there's not much to add actually. So like the creation of competitive advantages via first-party data usage. I think the dependency on walled gardens of Jesus, like we're just seeing it, like one stupid PR and the world is on fire. The ad tech at least, right? So that's something which it should not be the case, no matter what it is. I wish we have been in this position, of course, but it would be wrong as well, right? So that is something which I think we keep in the back of our heads as well, like that, making us less dependent on monopolistic players as well, something to work toward. Yep.
Keep options open, not all your eggs in one basket. And that's very good advice. look, guys, it's been great chatting with you, and yeah, it's been really good to hear your experience and what you're seeing on the market, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and partner with you guys and so on. So thank you, and I'm going to hand back over to Alison.